and 53 horses, and we were training to fight the Soviets. We didn't know what else to do. Of course you keep training. So I came to Washington. I became the Director of Strategic Plans and Policy. They gave me three-ring binders to study before I went to Congress to get grilled on what my job was. Of course, I couldn't begin to understand what was in those binders. But I began to get an understanding the second day I was in the office. When I left the office, that night, a guy came running in and said that 2 presidents of Rwanda and Burundi had just been shot down. I said, okay, show me the map, show me where Rwanda and Burundi are. And why is this of interest to us? He said, well, because they think they might have been shot down by a U.S. Stinger missile that we lost control of when we gave it to the Bush back in the 1980s. So I went home that Wednesday night with a sense of foreboding as to what Thursday would bring. Well, it turned out it wasn't a Stinger missile. It was a French missile that shot them down. By Friday, I was leaving the office. I'd learned one thing already, that the best source of intelligence in the Pentagon is not the National Military Command Center, it's CNN. So I kept the CNN on. As I was leaving the office, I saw, it wasn't a war movie, but there was fighting going on. There were explosions and so forth in Africa, and you could see the European troops and African faces. And I asked my assistant as I was leaving, what's going on? He said, there's some kind of invasion in Africa. Well, it struck me, I'd been 4 days out of Fort Hood, Texas, and Africa, that was part of the world, and I was supposed to be the Director of Strategic Plans and Policy. That was my responsibility. So I quickly called the U.S. European Command, which was also responsible for Africa. It was midnight over there. I woke up the duty officer, I guess. I said, what's going on in Rwanda? He said, nothing. I said, well, turn on CNN. Are you watching it? He says, no, I'm not. So they didn't know what was going on. We pulled an all-nighter. I called in as I was trying to get a grip on this thing. I found some of my staff officers. Said, tell me again, what is this Rwanda thing? He said, well, there's these 2 tribes. They're either Hutus and Tutsis or Tutus and Hutsis. We're not sure which, and so we weren't prepared to deal with this. This was 94. I came in on Saturday morning to meet with the Secretary of Defense. I understood there was going to be a problem, discussion of Korea. I'd been to Korea many times. I knew the war plans. And I knew our principal interest in Korea was to go over there and have our hand out. Because the way it works is we put the troops there and they pay for the troops. So I figured this is another preparation to go to Korea to get more basing support and more post-nation support from the South Koreans. It wasn't. There was Secretary of Defense Bill Perry talking earnestly about a possible North Korean nuclear bomb. President Clinton had gone to South Korea in October of '93. He'd said no nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. After he got back, the CIA kind of pulled on his sleeve and said, well, we should have told you this, but there may be already a couple of North Korean nukes. They had this nuclear power plant. It has fuel. You can take the fuel rods out. You can reprocess the fuel. You can extract plutonium. That's a fissionable material. They can make a couple of nukes out of it if they reprocess the plutonium. President Clinton said, well, did they do it? The CIA says, don't know. They won't let the Atomic Energy Agency, the international agency, in to inspect. So we began to talk about ratcheting up the pressure, going to the UN. The North Koreans were saying, if you take us to the UN, we'll consider it an act of war. Our general said, if they say it's an act of war, it might be an act of war. Give us more troops. We were about to go to war with North Korea. That was Saturday morning. Sunday, I was called into the White House to sit in the back room of the back row of the Situation Room. And I don't know what it looks like today. There's no telling with George Bush there, but I can tell you what it looked like then. It was just a little tiny room with wood paneling, and people sat around a table. And they talked. And here was the National Security Advisor, State, Secretary of Defense, Deputy National Security Advisor, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm in the back row trying to take notes along with a few assistant secretaries. And they're talking about rules of engagement for shooting down Serb aircraft over Yugoslavia. And as I'm taking these notes and listening to these people and looking at them, none of them, there are no fighter pilots in the room. And here they are talking about fighter tactics. You know, the plane goes this way and there's another plane here, and the radar, can the radar look up? No, but there's a radar on the ground. And what kind of radar is it? Gee, I'm not sure. We don't know. How far is the range? We're not positive. Well, is this hostile act? Is this, or hostile intent? Well, it might be a hostile act if they had the plane pointed. It would depend on what's on the plane. And here we're into all this international legal talk when we don't have the technical knowledge to do it. And I'm trying to make sense of this in my notebook, and I'm realizing we're already at war with Serbia over Yugoslavia. And on Monday morning, I came to work. It wasn't much of a weekend, and we didn't get many pictures hung in our new set of quarters at Fort McNair that weekend. So I come in on Monday morning, there's a knock on my door, and Brigadier General Tom Hill says, "Sir, I'm Tom Hill. I work for you. I was gone last week. I wanted to come in and say hello." He says, "But I have to tell you something. Now, this is a secret program, and I'm not allowed to tell you. I'm your representative, but I'm going to tell you anyway." He said, "We're planning to invade Haiti." So this was my first week in the post-Cold War world. And everything happened we almost went to war with North Korea. We stood aside as 800,000 people were hacked to death by machetes in Rwanda. We did execute an air campaign against the Serbs over Yugoslavia, and we did invade Haiti. But as we went through about 6 or 8 weeks, it was a crisis every weekend. Every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, there were meetings in the White House, and people were exhausted. And finally, General Shalikashvili, my boss, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, called me in. He said, "Wes," he said, "we hired you." He's Polish. He came to the United States when he was 16, so he still had a little Polish accent. He says, "Wes, we hired you to be the strategist because you're supposed to be so smart." He said, "Tell us, what is this strategy that has us working every weekend in crisis?"